Yeah,
Like, just
and it's
this movie is fucking tight.
and
Like,
it's
it is
the
on
pacing,
point.
it's the aesthetic, like we said, all the sets, all the character design, the haircuts, the styling, the costumes, all super good. And we talked about the music too, and the music
Yeah.
is also just great. That and a lot of it's more environmental. Like obviously they kind of hit you over the head with "Cry Little Sister," which was the song that was made for this. Which
Yeah.
I love that track. Like unironically, I think it's great. But also, you mentioned the Aerosmith song "Walk This Way," but that's just environmental of people listening to that music at the beach when the vampires are hunting, right? They brought in Excess, which was very popular during this time period, to do some of the songs. You mentioned the "People Are Strange" thing at the end, which I thought was a great way to end the movie, but the soundtrack is really great. And you know what's funny, guys? I don't know if you found this when you were doing your own research, but they finally made a "Cry Little Sister" music video by G. Tom Mack, who is the artist who did this.
No, I didn't know this,
They
actually.
just made it last year for its
Wow.
35th anniversary of The Lost Boys. So now he's like obviously quite old, and he's like against a green screen singing this song. It is great.
I got it. I got to check that out.
It is great.
Yeah, but this is what's really interesting about the way they're together, because I really don't think, like, I don't think Warner Brothers sort of knew that this was going to be like a cult movie, but I think Joel Schumacher did. I mean, I think he instinctively knew that how this was going to play and how it was going to be regarded and how it was going to find an audience, because, as Duncan has said, this is the quintessential 80s like zeitgeist. This is what's going on, guys. We've got Reagan's, America. We've got traditional. It's the tonal clash of the outsiders, the subcultures coming into conflict with, genuine, fondly regarded Americana. Right? It's a movie about the nuclear family and sort of, being a more traditional thing, and then the other type of modern family, So
well, and it's even very explicit, because the whole thing is at the end. It almost, the commentary is almost that the idea of the obsession with the nuclear family. It doesn't say the nuclear family is bad. I want to make that clear. But it does say that the obsession with having it can be destructive, because, it's almost this domineering vampire who is trying to force this woman into being these boys' mother, in a way. And it's like, it's insidious. It really is, right? And I think the question is like, is that being forced on certain people within the society? And is it necessary? I mean, it's a big question about family dynamics that you end the movie with.
I would even say you could paint it this way too. Think about the beginning of the movie when they arrive at the granddad's house, who is obviously coded as was some sort of hippie type new age figure, right? Where he's got all these weird, like a very eclectic set of things in his house, and he himself is into taxidermy, which is probably the weirdest sort of not totally psycho hobby you can have in America.
It's so great though. I love.
When they arrive at this house, the first thing they complain about is he doesn't have a TV. And then what does the Corey Haim guy, the guy who just complained about not having a TV? He goes on the boardwalk and immediately just flexes that he has loads of very old school comic book knowledge. That's another thing this movie to me is, since it's an 80s movie when culture's shifting in a potentially scary new direction, it's sort of like that is old school Americana. That's almost like the 60s colliding with whatever the 80s is going to become, which obviously and then the premise goes, culture comes through children, at least in the modern day, without going on a whole tangent. It comes, your kids encounter the other kids and then the things in their youth culture, and then it seeps into the family that way. So there's even some of that, I think, built into this movie.
I think it's even a commentary on television itself, because remember, they have all these adventures because they're not at home watching TV. They have to find other things to do. And that becomes, even though bad things happen to them sometimes, it becomes a much more transformative growing up experience. And also, where does the mom go to work? At the television store, which is owned by the vampire, right? And it's almost as if the seduction element of the vampire is also present in the idea of the seduction of television, in a way, right? So I think that's despite, which is weird because it's also a movie, so you wouldn't think it would be making these kinds of commentaries, but I feel like it is.
Yeah, so I think it's great. This was a summer movie. It was a summer event movie that had no right to sort of succeed, to the degree it did, and its
It's
impact.
crazy how well it's held up, though, isn't it? That's the thing to me.
So good.
Well, I mean, also I think its broader impact on culture. I don't think we can get to say a Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for example.
Mate, when they were even doing the special effects, I was thinking of that exact thing. So people don't know that's one of the things that Buffy sort of like brought into the mainstream culture, is that when you're the vampire, you get that little like weird burrowed forehead or whatever. They do that basically. That is act effect. No, mate, so much. I actually think low key, this is like a sleeper movie that so many movies have stolen from aesthetically, or like certain like concepts and tropes. Like this, like I know I'd have to check the timeline, but I feel like there's a bunch of things have taken from this. And it's so stylized as well.
Absolutely, and this was essentially what I think. Because when we talk about next week, when we talk about Near Dark, this is one of the reasons Near Dark doesn't do as well as a movie, because that bombed at the box office, is because of the existence of this movie. This is what people wanted vampire movies to be moving forward, right? They wanted it to be this, really sort of decadent, mysterious, sexy, kind of lifestyle. And so, when I think it's the same year.
It's the same year. Out. Yes, it was like 5 months later. I think Near Dark came out.
An ultra realistic, horrifying nightmare of being a vampire, So yeah, this movie basically, and I would even say it informs Twilight and all that other stuff. Like, you can't have any of the other media that comes without this as the touchstone. This was Joel Schumacher, who, obviously sadly passed away a few years ago. But this is like Joel Schumacher absolutely like just swinging for the fences about, the gay experience in America, and doing it by using two mythologies, because it's not just an updated myth about the vampires. It's obviously all the Peter Pan references in the movie. The fact that it's called The Lost Boys. I think Joel Schumacher said in an interview, he was obsessed with the idea that Peter Pan was a vampire. Why doesn't he age? Why does he fly? And so I think he took that, and incredibly, he said he was reading a lot about British gypsy culture as well. The idea of being an itinerant, the idea of having to move around all the time. So, he sort of combined all of that into this, just incredible, like I say, 80s experience. Like, I actually thought, like, I hadn't watched this movie in about, I don't know, like 20 years.
Oh, really?
It would have been a long
I think I saw this movie about 5 years ago, but I was shocked at how much I loved it again.
And I never had a desire to go back, right? I never felt the calling of the Lost Boys.
Really?
Watch it last, for real.
I love this movie.
And I was like, wow, actually, the way I'd remembered it was sort of, it was. I remembered the goofy. I remembered the goofy aspects, and none of the actual really cool stuff, and the really solid fucking performances from everyone. Like, actually, this is a legit 80s film. This is like really good.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or be a pleb and don't.